Sir?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast this evening. Thank you so much for joining us on another broadcast through my eyes with Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. This week, we will, Prof, good evening, sir.
Good evening. It's all right, good evening. I think the dignity of our traditional rulers are probably putting you off balance. So it's all right. You're allowed to make mistakes this evening. Even I am nervous at the presence of the traditional rulers.
Yes, it's my toughest challenge so far is tonight's challenge, and that's for a number of reasons. Number one is I can't really see the people who have joined. The team is having a look at that. Number two, some who have joined may not have joined with their names. And number three, having been out of Nigeria for so many years, I am shaking. My legs are shaking on the pronunciations of the names and how I get that correctly this evening. So I want to apologize to everybody way ahead of time. I am sorry if I get the pronunciation of the names wrong. I will do my best. We've tried to get the names to make sure we can call the names correctly. I would also want to mention that where possible, if you can please rename yourself with your name so that the team can see who has joined the broadcast this evening. That will make it a lot easier to identify who has joined. So once again, I do apologize ahead of time. And Prof, this evening, I will hand over to you, sir, as we start the broadcast, because something struck me earlier on in the day as I looked at the potential ceasefire and the role that some traditional rulers may have played in the ceasefire in the Middle East. So I want to ask you, sir, what is your take on the ceasefire that's been talked about before we go into the main topic for tonight, sir?
Well, let me join you in welcoming our celebrated and eminent traditional rulers. You have an advantage over me. I cannot even see the pictures. At least you can see the pictures on your screen. And once you see people wearing crowns and turbans, then you know you are dealing with a traditional ruler. I cannot even see the pictures. So it's going to be a tough one dealing with the presence of our eminent royal fathers. At the end of last week, we decided that this week will be devoted to the role of traditional rulers in Africa. Because some of the comments that I have heard or that people have checked with me are confusing the role of traditional rulers in Nigeria with the theme that we have in mind. At the end of the session last week, there was nobody on this platform who disagreed with the conclusion that we need the presence and the wisdom of our traditional rulers in conflict resolution in Africa itself. The African Union, which is the apex body among African leaders, has several bodies, several institutions that it has set up. And what we wanted to examine was whether our traditional fathers think that their presence within the EU will be a positive addition to the bodies that we have set up in order to resolve conflicts in Africa. Whether we can find a role for them to play, given number one, the fact that there will be countries in Africa where they won't have traditional rulers. There will be countries where traditional rulers will be held in the highest esteem. And there will be others where they will just play ceremonial roles. That is really the mandate that we need this evening. In your introduction, fortunately, you drew our attention to the fact that it is the Emir of Qatar, the king of Qatar, who actually has spearheaded the diplomatic negotiation that had been going on between Hamas, Israel, with Egypt and the United States, supporting them in trying to work out a ceasefire, a pause, or whatever you may want to call it, in the Middle East. And that is supposed to come into to be activated tomorrow at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock local time over there, while the first of the hostages will be released at 4 p.m. local time over there. And Carter had been the brain behind this, working night and day. And I mean, is this just divine intervention that on the very day our traditional rulers in Nigeria are gathered under our own humble umbrella to consider whether we need them in Africa, that this actually would be list. With your permission, our fathers and my colleagues, let me say a word or two, because this cannot be happening in the world, and we will have this our own looking at world events as we do every week, and we ignore it. I'm just going to take a few minutes, and then we can go to our own central mandate. As human beings, what is happening in the Middle East is a disaster. It's a disaster. As human beings, we should all bow our head in shame, not only for what is happening, but for what is even being planned. We are going to have 4 days of peace. Just 4 days of ceasefire. Now, during those 4 days, yes, people will be fed. Doctors will attend to people who have been injured, the injury. There will be no bombing. And then after 4 days, the war starts again. What would you say we have gained? What has the world gained that is being celebrated? What? That you feed people for 4 days, and then after 4 days, you start bombing them again, and we are calling this just one for celebration? No, no, not at all. We as human beings must examine our soul and wonder how we have got to this stage where we will be celebrating this as some form of a victory. You see, we don't even know what to call it. We're all ashamed. The UN has been sidelined because what has been worked out is outside the outside the parameters of the United Nations. This has been worked out through the energy wisdom of the Emir of Qatar with Israel, Hamas, Egypt, and let us be truthful, the United States. Because it's only the United States that can make Israel accept anything. So it's a failure of the United Nations that this is how far we can go. But we must thank the Emir of Qatar. We must celebrate him. That I was listening to the briefing from his Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who was saying yesterday they worked until 2 a.m. in the morning, and today they worked until 4 a.m. in the morning, and still they couldn't get everything signed on because this pause, humanitarian pause, was supposed to have been activated today, but they couldn't get it already, even by 4 a.m. this morning, that they now have to shift it to 7 tomorrow morning. So our royal fathers must know what they want to get involved in conflict resolution, what they will be getting into. As a former, I know where we will sit there all night with solve what language was the heads of states to take a ratify. So that what is on. We call this resolution that we call some form achievement. It is not achievement at all to pause for 4 days and start killing people again. Human beings. Better thing. You'll be able to feel this. Let me welcome again our traditional fathers, their royal majesties, to this platform, which is for them. Today is for them to share with us their own views on what role they believe institutionally they can play in resolving conflicts in Africa. So Tunde, I don't know if you've seen any of the royal fathers, the names or recognition that you could call upon. I don't know. His Eminence, the Sultan, is supposed to be here. Kabesi Deoni is supposed to be here. The Emir of Kano is supposed to be here. The Etsunope is supposed to be here. So I don't know because I cannot see because of my screen.
Yes, sir. Some of the names are not so obvious, but I can see Igwe Lawrence Agubuzu, who has named himself, so I can see that. Your Royal Highness, you're welcome, sir, to the program this evening. At the moment, I'm not sure if there are any others already here because I cannot see the name specifically that that points to them, sir.
Okay. Igwe, very well known to me. With apart from the fact that you've been a career foreign service officer, we also interacted at the 2014 National Conference. So let us then start with you. Your views on this issue, and maybe by the time we've moved on, others will have come in. But please, may I, with all due respect, if there are any traditional ruler present, I'm sorry, since names are not obvious.
Chief John Filani.
Chief John Filani. That would be from.
I am presently at Ado Ekiti.
Okay, but not the Kabisi way of Ado Ekiti.
No, not at all. No, sir.
Okay, Igwe, we start with you. If you could please unmute yourself.
Please go ahead and unmute yourself, sir.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
You can hear me now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. And Your Excellency, let me start by thanking you for creating this platform that gives us an opportunity to interact with you once more. Those of us who passed through the foreign ministry when you served as a foreign minister have the highest regards for you as a great patriot of this country. And you've continued to make your services available to this country. You were there with us during the National Conference of 2014. You were, in fact, the engine of that conference in your capacity as the deputy chairman. So thank you very much. When I look at the history of our foreign service, I see you as someone who is inimitable, a quintessential diplomat who found himself as foreign minister, and you have left legacies that remain unchallenged. The Technical Aid Corps is a typical example of the legacy you left behind in that ministry. So I thank you very much. And for bringing us together now, I think it's providential that some of us who passed through you in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are now exercising other roles. In my own capacity now, I'm a traditional ruler, and I find this very, very interesting to participate today. Now, the role that we, the traditional rulers of Africa, can play in resolving conflicts in Africa will be dependent on our own people, our own subjects, if they give us the support to play the role. I am sure that whatever traditional rulers can do, where we have the system, we in Africa can do the same. But the difference we note is that in many parts of the world where traditional institution exists, the countries have managed to assign specific roles to traditional rulers. And that has helped the traditional rulers in those countries to be very effective. In the United Kingdom, in parts of South Africa, in the Middle East, you find that the role that the traditional ruler can play will be equal to the level of political responsibility that the traditional ruler can legitimately exercise in his country. You see, for instance, the Emir of Qatar is a head of state. In fact, it's a kind of theocracy that they have there. He's a head of government, he's a head of religion, and he can use that effectively to achieve this result that is exciting to the whole world today. If he's not a ceremonial head of state, like I don't have the ability to do what he's doing. In our country, for instance, the Oni of Ife, each time we met in the meeting of Nigerian Traditional Rulers Council, and we go to see our head of state, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he will always remind the president that the traditional rulers in Nigeria require some roles in the constitution to enable them effectively contribute to solving some of our national problems. Without a role for the traditional rulers in Africa and the constitutions of our respective countries, it will be very difficult for them to play the kind of role that traditional rulers in the Middle East are playing. And they, for example, in this conflict between Israel and Hamas. You recall, Your Excellency, that not long ago, our leader, His Eminence Saad Abubakar III, the Sultan of Sokoto, was assigned the responsibility to go and mediate in the crisis in our neighboring country, Niger. And of course, he did so. But if he was not given that responsibility on his own, he wouldn't be able to leave Nigeria to go to Niger to do anything. So I think that the traditional rulers have some inherent, authority that make them capable of resolving crises, because people tend to trust us as traditional rulers, believing that we act on the basis of altruism and innocence, and we just come and do the right thing. Because we are very close to the people. when people are suffering, like you watch the bombings in the Middle East going on. Traditional rulers who live with the people and feel their pains, they feel it more than any other group of human beings. So I'll end my initial contribution so far. And once more, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Majesty, for your presence this evening and for your contribution. Tunde, do you notice the presence of any other traditional ruler?
Not at this stage, sir. But I would like to say that if there is anyone who is in, maybe you haven't named yourself, please go ahead and call our attention to that now. If you are already in the house and we haven't recognized your name, please go ahead and call our attention to that.
Okay, good evening, sir. I hope I'm being heard. I am Ambassador Ahmed Umar and traditional title holder in Kano. I was about to say, like, also an advisor to His Highness the Emir of Kano. I was as Forest Service officer and have reached the height of my career. Last week I participated and I was quite happy the opportunity to participate in such an esteemed gathering. I mind because I have been involved. I always like to speak from the position of being a participant, both in and outside. What I could just add is what I have seen through the years that I have been having this position recently, that the traditional institution, as it is today in Nigeria, have helped to create that domestic stability, which is essential for a successful foreign policy. I know in so many instances whereby my emir could be called to try to sell out a specific, to create understanding or sensitization on a particular issue the government has taken very seriously. And I also know very well that most heads of states, when they come, they always try to come to Kano. And I'm sure that is not without a reason. And whenever we travel, like not long ago, we went to Senegal, and the emir was even decorated with the Senegalese highest national honor. And again, culturally, if we can talk of cultural diplomacy, it's another institution that has survived all the changes that have been taking place. And the institution is still recognized as an essential, integral part of our lives that is accorded a lot of respect. And sometimes when the are receiving audiences, they mention political issues. And again, also, I know like some countries, they had a certain project and they wanted the traditional institution to assist to sell their viewpoint to government to see to the success of that particular project to which Nigeria is involved. In particular, I could mention the gas pipeline project, both from Nigeria to Morocco and also from Nigeria to Algeria. There has been a lot of attempt to create understanding from both Morocco and Algeria and through the instrumentality of the traditional institution. And I also know how there was a time one of our Davos, we received about 14 ambassadors, 14 of them, resident heads of mission, who came to Kano to try to participate to the extent that we even had to provide them horses and adorned them with our traditional attire, and they participated in the Durban. So this is another way by which we also try to advance our cultural heritage to the admiration and also uh, understanding and admiration of the international community. And through that, we have received so many offers. And also it has created that atmosphere of understanding and accessibility. Anytime something is required, they're always easily accessible. Only recently, the Palestinian ambassador in Nigeria visited the Chinese emir of Kano. And the main issue was he was trying to sell their viewpoint to the emir. Of course, that is a reason for him to understand and also the people to understand the viewpoint of the Palestinians. It came quite a while, and even the Chinese had to see him on a special day, which is outside the normal days that he sees his visitors. So this is just for now, and probably I could still come in later in the program. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for that, sir. Professor Akinyemi, are you still there, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. So we a bit of a pull out because we knew that some of our royal fathers were going to be here today, and there was a question that came back. That question I want to, if it's the and the resonance of that has weakened the traditional institution as it was before that. That was one of the questions that was put through from the polls, the questionnaire that went out.
The ego, attention to one of the factors that is going to create a problem, and that is the status of traditional rulers in different parts of Africa. It drew our attention to the fact that the Emir of Qatar is the head of state of Qatar. He has the final say. He doesn't need to report to anybody. Everyone reports to him. And that was the situation before colonialism, when the Emir of Kano, the Oni of Ife, the Oba of Benin, etc., will have the final say in their kingdom. And to that extent will be the final authority. Now, we to make reference to what President Obasanjo said the last week, we now have Western democracy as an institution that, well, I won't use this language of copy, but that's it, and that has led to a loss. If we're going to tell the truth, it has lost to a lot of our traditions. If mentioned to the Sultan being sent to the Republic of Niger during the crisis that even involved ECOWAS. But he had to be entrusted with a mission by the chairman of ECOWAS. And obviously, I'm sure they gave him parameters within which he had to operate and blueprint of what he had to say and what he didn't have to say to the new rulers there, while the chairman of ECOWAS will have the final say. So even the concessions that the Sultan may feel he should make, if he then looked at the blueprint he was given while living in Nigeria, that the heads of states of ECOWAS will not accept this, irrespective of his own feeling. He will not go beyond that. And that is, I think that is what is behind the question that was, posed to us. There is no doubt at all that our traditional rulers can speak to each other. The issue is the authority that they carry will be limited to what is given to them. In the cultural field, because we must not by any means ignore the fact that culturally we could still bind ourselves. I made mention last week of the fact that when the Oni visits Brazil or Cuba, it's regarded almost as a god there, because the people there still carry with them the image they left Nigeria. This is still the embodiment of Yoruba land. And so they still remember that they carry this. But we should not, because of that, think that he could commit Nigeria. The Nigerian president can use him to seek to persuade the president of Brazil about a Nigerian point of view on an issue maybe coming before the United Nations, or maybe even on a bilateral basis. And we produce oil, maybe we would like, on a bilateral basis to sell our oil to the president of Brazil. And if the president of Brazil is somebody, maybe was a professor of cultural affairs before he became president of Brazil, and you now feel okay, the traditional ruler in Nigeria could strengthen our hand if we entrust that mission to him. Or as the Ambassador Umar from Kano has reminded, if the emir was on a mission to Senegal, where they then end up speaking Hausa to each other without needing interpreters. And whatever the issue, maybe the issue will involve Gambia, that they can. So there is no doubt. But I think to me, that's the answer to that question that was raised. I think we should throw open the floor now to all our participants, since the number of traditional rulers is rather limited. So, because I'm not a traditional ruler, and I don't have the royal blood, flowing within me. Maybe there will be people on our platform who maybe they are not traditional rulers, but they are proto-traditional rulers. They may wish to chip in to this on this issue.
Yes, sir. I can see a message from Ambassador Igali here that the Etsu Nupe, the national coordinator of the Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria, indicated that several of them would join but might be slightly late today in joining. But I want to open the floor to anyone who has a question for any of the royal fathers that are here at the moment. Either type the comment in the chat window so I can see that, or if you want to raise your hand and the team would notify me that you have raised your hand, and you can go ahead and ask your question or make a contribution to the discussion that is going on this evening. So if you want to make a comment, you want to ask a question, either raise your hand or put the comment in the chat, and I will pick the comment from there. There are a few more questions that were sent in, but I will hold those for now and just wait for people who are asking the comments live here this evening. Any comments from anyone? Please raise, you can unmute yourself.
And if I may add that if people want to make comments on the Middle East, the peace process, I don't know if you want to call it the peace process, so that we can use the talent of our colleagues who are here to talk about the Middle East. Maybe we will throw open the floor to that as well.
Okay, sir. I can see a hand raised here. I think, I'm not sure if this is an Ambassador Adewale Laditon. Please go ahead and unmute yourself, sir.
Professor Laditon.
Unmute.
Go ahead, sir.
Emir of Qatar, like other countries in that region, do they have constitution?
I think Wale has unmuted.
Because, our
this is what old age just
respected in our country. But we have a constitution. There is no way they can become a head of state in any form. What we had before was House of Chiefs, where we had two sides. I think Bolaji, oh, sorry, not Bolaji. I think Professor Akinyemi will be able to guide us on this, because we talk of Western House and then the government. So I don't see how is it going to be possible for our traditional rulers to assume the status of head of state.
Well, first of all, for the sake of our colleagues here, Professor Ladita and I were classmates in secondary school in Igbobi College. So we are familiar on first name basis. So don't be surprised if we pull jokes, on each other. But Professor Laditon, the point that is being made is this. You are quite right that it depends on the constitution that we're running. And during the First Republic, Yes, we had the Northern House of Chiefs, Western House of Chiefs, Eastern House of Chiefs, and then we had the Senate. Now, the issue that was raised, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, was that when Gaddafi was alive, he peddled this idea of having an African House of Chiefs or an African House of Traditional Rulers that he felt could be a useful addition to institutions in Africa. He probably, I mean, Gaddafi probably had ideas of his own, because if I recall, he was later on crowned the head of African traditional rulers. And I still have this picture in my mind of him wearing kente, which is that of the Ashanti Kingdom, and a gold crown on his head. So really, Gaddafi might have been, going off on a tangent that may not have been a useful introduction. But I think that then brought to some people's mind that, are we wasting the talent of our leader, of our traditional rulers? Are we wasting their talent? Can we look for a role for them to play on an African, on a Pan-African setting? Can we find a role for them to play? Of course, the issue you are raising, which is very germane, is we are not even finding a role for them to play internally in our countries. I recall that in Uganda, was it Idi Amin or so, who abolished royalty in Uganda, and since then they haven't brought it back, even though Idi Amin's long gone. They haven't brought it back. But in South Africa, they do what we have done. The king of the Zulus is there. The king of the Xhosa is there. And within each of their kingdoms, they play their own role. But traditionally, on the national level, they leave that to the politicians. And I think that's the point that Professor Ladiston is making. Whether you are saying we better resolve the home front first before we move on to the Pan-African level to find a role for our leaders, our traditional rulers.
Thank you for that, sir. Any other person wants to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand, and as soon as I see you, I would call on you, sir. But sir, one of the questions that came up, and I think I actually found this quite surprising, sir, was the fact that some people thought that our royal fathers did not have sort of foreign service experience and maybe didn't have the necessary skills from a diplomatic point of view. But based on last week and some of the research that had been done for the program today, the team had been sharing with us that quite a few of our royal fathers in Nigeria actually have experience in foreign service. Some of them former ambassadors. What is your take on that, sir? Being a foreign minister and having seen and know the kind of skill that's required, what is your take on the issue of the knowledge base of traditional rulers able to play that role on a global scene?
No, you see, the success or otherwise of a mission to which you could send a traditional ruler has to deal with the relationship which country A has with country B. And we are all allies, thank God. To recall what happened in the Republic of Niger crisis, not only the Sultan, but the former Emir of Kano was also sent, and he was received, even though the people there were military leaders. But they received him because there was another traditional ruler in Niger who had an affinity with the former Emir of Kano. And that traditional ruler in Niger had an affinity with the president or with the military ruler in Niger. And so the first issue was process. There was a process of access to seat of power that became available. Number two, the respect which the military rulers in Niger had for their own traditional leader, that respect was also transferred to the former Emir of Kano. That, of course, as we know, we don't know, because we were not briefed when the Emir of Kano came back. That's number one. And we were not briefed as regards the kind of discussion that went on between them. But we know that the issue was not resolved because the leaders in Niger have actually gone to the ECOWAS court, a modern institution. They sued ECOWAS to the ECOWAS court in order to get an injunction for sanctions to be lifted. So while the process, you could say the process worked, there was nothing achieved. However, it is possible that if you recall, if our memory serves us right, at that time, the issue was boiling up on both sides of the boundary. And it is possible that the intervention of the Sultan and the intervention of the former Emir of Kano could have de-escalated the crisis up to the situation now where it is no longer really on the front burner. Nobody now believes a war is about to break out. And so to that extent, they serve to their purpose. And, within so it's not really experience as a foreign service officer, although the experience will help if it was there. The former Emir of Kano, Alhaji Bayero, was our former ambassador in Senegal, I believe, before he became Emir. And there is no doubt that a combination of the status on both sides, one, as a former ambassador to Senegal, and two, as Emir of Kano, who have empowered him to do whatever mission you send him on. But there will also have been, other emirs who might not have been foreign service officers, but who would equally have done the job quite well.
There's a question here for you, sir. This one says from Mani Ocheboju. Forgive me if I got the pronunciation wrong there. But this person says, Dear Professor Akinyemi, can you or anyone that participated in the 2014 National Conference recall any recommendations made for the role of our traditional leaders?
Igwe, can you remember our recommendation on the traditional rulers, especially as far as setting up the Council of Traditional Rulers was concerned? Can you remember, Igwe?
You can go ahead and mute yourself, sir.
If you unmute, Igwe, if you could unmute yourself.
Yes, let me get the team to send him a message. Might be a bit easier. A message should pop up on your screen now, sir.
It's
Yes,
unmuted.
Your Excellency, there was a recommendation. We worked in committees.
Yes.
The committee that handled the traditional institution submitted recommendations, which were included in the overall recommendation of the conference. I don't have the documents with me now, but I know there was a role recommended for traditional rulers by the National Conference of 2014.
Igwe, you are quite right. I also recall that we approved that recommendation. In fact, I think it was on the basis of that the Lamido Adamawa conferred on me the title of Hasken Adamawa.
Exactly.
Yes. So that's the answer to the question.
So you are a royal father too, sir. I said that.
Not really.
So I can see two hands raised. Ambassador Lewu has his hands raised. After that, Ambassador Egali. Ambassador Lewu, please unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everybody. I would like to associate myself with His Majesty LOC Agubuzu, who was a great boss to us in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and who guided so many of us when we came into the service. And he was so humble that even when he drafted any speech or any memo, he would even show us the little ones to see whether what he drafted was good or not. So I'm happy that he is succeeding in what he's doing at the moment. That being said, I think the role of our traditional rulers or fathers has been constrained by the type of democracy we practice, has been reflected in the Constitution, which was earlier mentioned. In the past, when I was a young boy, the Oba used to be the Alpha and Omega. He was the owner of the land. He was the one who used to settle land matters and settle even customary quarrels between husbands and wives, and also he was one that used to give chieftaincy titles to various members that deserved those titles. But as it was mentioned earlier on, the issue of colonialism restricted all those functions to the extent that the district officers, the DOs we used to call them, took on a lot of those roles. And after independence, the local government chairmen are now doing most of those aspects, to the extent that some local government chairmen who are just like a grandson to some of the rulers seem to have more power than the rulers themselves, than the traditional rulers. So it's so sad to see that sort of thing happening. I believe that as LOC, we used to call him, His Majesty LOC, recommended that, which he mentioned that the Oni of Ife, whenever they met Tinubu, requested for a special place for traditional rulers in Nigeria. I think that should be looked into seriously and put into effect, because a lot of the things happen in Nigeria, the rascality of our politicians will be limited if the traditional rulers are given a special role that could help to reduce the rascality of our politicians. Secondly, if we are unable to change the constitution at the moment, I think what the President Tinubu has already done by sending the Emir, the Sultan of Sokoto to Nigeria last time, you could also replicate that by sending many of the traditional rulers he feels are well endowed intellectually and with humility to some countries of the world as his special envoys. Nothing stops him from that. As the professor said earlier on, the blueprints would be the guiding document, that the guiding principle they will hold in hand, so that they don't go beyond their briefs. So I believe that having them as special envoys at the moment, with the hope that the National Assembly will find a place for them in the Constitution, will help us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir. There's a comment here from someone, Lawrence Obishaki. The links, cultural language with Brazil, especially from Yorubas, are apparently low-hanging fruits to get closer to Brazil, to Cuba, etc. But why does it seem that despite the bold moves from Ife, the federal government seems to be cold towards this side? For instance, within the framework of bilateral cultural agreements with Brazil, dated in the 70s, bringing Brazilian lecturers to old Unife, all efforts to send Yoruba lecturers as requested and highly desired by Brazilians was not encouraged by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Nigeria and relevant organs, is the point that this person has made. And I also noticed, let me just check quickly, that I think one of our royal fathers, the Olota of Ota, has joined the program. Good evening, sir. You are welcome, sir.
If I may comment on Ambassador Obishakin's statement, it is very, what he said is very true. I was the ambassador during that period in Brazil, and Obishakin was one of my staff. And we encouraged special relationship between Brazil and Nigeria, particularly those of them, the universities that were very interested in having Yoruba language as one of their major languages to be taught in the school, in the universities. And like he said, I blame the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It depends on whoever was the external affairs or foreign affairs minister at that time. It depends, unfortunately, on the interest, where the interest lies in the mind of the foreign minister. If the minister is culturally minded, he would be happy to encourage such exchange of lecturers, professors, and even students. Now, we are even happy to hear that in Brazil, Yoruba language is now the second lingua franca, declared the second lingua franca, apart from Portuguese, in Brazil. Why don't we take advantage of that and see how we can improve our relationship, particularly culturally and otherwise? Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir.
Kabesi, Olotafota, Kabesi, we welcome you to the platform. And we know that you share a common border with the Benin Republic. Well, please, we would like to share with us your experiences as a royal father in mediating conflicts between Nigerians and Beninoas whenever these conflicts have arisen, and how you have found your status as the Olota to be useful in mediating conflicts in that area.
Thank you for having me. I'm far away from the around the border, like Imeko, Ado people, they are the ones within the border area. But that notwithstanding, we do have issues with the Egun people. That's the Awori and the Egun people. We do have issues with them. But over the period I've been on the throne, I've been able to move closer to Akran of Badagry. And we do have a cordial relation with the Egun people now, but we still have a bit of conflict within the Ado area with the Egun. But that will, because myself and Akran of Badagry are two talking terms, I think recently he sent one of the others to me just to come around to say hello. So with that, I've been able to mediate between issues concerning Aworis and, the Eguns. But it's still ongoing. And my prayer is that, we'll be able to have good relationship with them. Because presently, within the Ado area, the Egun people occupied lots of Awori lands, and we've tried so many, we've tried so many things, including it seems we are not others. They don't even respect our police. So what we are trying to do now is to be friendly with them and see if they could probably negotiate with us so that we can take possession of our lands. That's the only area I'm dealing with within the borders. But again, when you look at it culturally, maybe during the Oyo Empire, I think we will probably say we are one. But because of the international boundary between us, it appears we are different. Even within the border area, there is another Olota Okota whom I've never met, and I don't even know, I don't have any history about them, but so many other traditional rulers in Benin Republic have, reach out to me that there is another Olota Okota and they want me to meet up with him. But these days, I believe we'll, building bridges that are causing all these land problems. Because again, we've had intermarriage between the Ado people and the Eguns. There's been kind of intermarriage between them, so that is also an issue because based on the relationship, they refuse to vacate the land that belongs to Awuri people. And there has been so many court orders, judgments, which they refuse to take. And, there's been so many killing of Awuri people. But fortunately, our police cannot handle the situation. So that is where we are now.
Thank you very much, sir. That was Olota of Ota, His Royal Highness Oba Professor Adeyemi Obalanlege, who is also the chairman of Ogun State Awori Obas Forum in Ogun State in Nigeria. Thank you very much for your comments there, sir. I can see quite a few hands. Professor Bola Akintenriwa, can you go ahead, sir, or mute yourself and make your comment?
Thank you, sir. The debate has been very, very interesting, and many issues have been raised, which prompts me to think a little bit differently. Let me begin with the point of observation by His Majesty, by His Excellency, Lawrence Agubudu. We knew his record at the level of the OAU before transformation to AU. And I like his submission that there is the need to provide a role-playing, function for the Obas. I agree, but it also creates a lot of headache for me. The issue is that why must the traditional rulers be invited to come and play a role when in the traditional setting, whenever there's any problem in any given stratum of society, his domain, he will naturally intervene. So he doesn't need the permission of any citizen in his community. No need for any community citizen inviting. The Obas generally have a traditional system of monitoring their community. They have representatives in their on their streets, in their districts. These are the people that normally will first of all attend to any misunderstanding, even before drawing the attention of the Kabiyesi in this particular case. Now, when you look at the problem at either the regional level or the continental level. The regional bodies like the ECOWAS, they have a committee of elders. They call them either the men of wisdom, those that have intelligence, experiences, to look into some supranational, misunderstandings. The elders, I am saying that the traditional rulers only need to borrow a leaf from this. Since they have meetings, they are having collective joint meetings, they should simply name some committee of elders too amongst them that will now have the mandate of other obas who are acting on behalf of the generality of the people to now make a case whenever there is any dispute at the level of the federal government. In this case, when we are talking about conflict resolution, are we just talking about either family disputes, cases of divorce, land disputes, and so on and so forth? Is it not possible, for instance, if there is a continental association of African nobles, not the way it was conceived by Muammar Gaddafi, in which case Muammar Gaddafi was considered the king of Africa, and all other obas are coming to prostrate, to bow down before him. No, we should have, an association of obas in Africa within the framework of people to people, getting involved in the governance of Africa. So I'm trying to say that basically the first role to be played, the first challenge, is for the obas themselves to organize themselves and make themselves relevant. I am aware that we have some this cultural body in Abuja, which did a conference on the role of obas. I remember they published one book, one edited book by that time. Many issues were raised there. The obas should just get a copy of the book, sit down, get themselves into subcommittees, especially dealing with various issues of governance. And it will be better that case. And we naturally have the support of the people. I agree with Ambassador Agubuzu, who said that the role to be played by the obas is largely a function of the people's support. One cannot agree more than that. But fundamentally, I think that thruMYeyes platform, this issue of obas rule should be taken more seriously in such a way that Professor Akinyemi himself should be able to organize a national conference to discuss this particular matter. This is how, for instance, governance will be brought closer to the people. Now we must thank the Olota of Otta for the role he's playing, etc. Now the role he has played within the framework of the Aworis, for instance, did he get the permission of Buhari or Tinubu in doing that one? He took the initiative. This is precisely what we are saying. Did Professor Akinyemi get permission from any president, any governor, any minister before introducing this type of platform? that is bringing people to reflect, to exchange, and discuss issues in national governance. When he was a foreign minister, His Majesty referred to the legacy he left behind. He referred to the technical aid corps. There's no disputing that fact. And I'm in agreement with him, saying that bringing the thruMYeyes together today to join the academics now, so that we can borrow from the fountain of knowledge of the Royal Majesties, that this is also another legacy. Of course it is, because it has never been done before. They have been meeting. But within the framework of thruMYeyes discussion program, this is new. And I think this one should be strengthened, taken more seriously, get more of the traditional rulers. Then this platform will be an instrument for further promoting not only cordial understanding, but as a mechanism for the Royal Majesties playing, a more strategic calculations in conflict resolution. Respectfully submitted, please.
Thank you very much, sir. I can see Mani Ochugbaju. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here again. I'll make my contribution very brief. One of the things I wanted to add to what has been said so far is that amending the Nigerian Constitution, as we know, is an uphill task. I'm not a pessimist. I believe it can be done. I think one of the what I will call low-hanging fruits of our conversation so far may be a policy direction to encourage conflict resolution within the communities, within the state, even nationally, to be conducted or organized or handled by the Obas. I know they're already doing it. But sir, our courts are overwhelmed. I say so because I go to court every day. There are adjourned cases. We have few judges. Our legal system is creaking, is aching, is breaking at the seams. Many of the cases that are handled there can be done by alternative dispute resolution. As a legal policy, there's an alternative dispute resolution that is encouraged. But it is not popular. It's not popularized. And the alternative dispute resolution mechanism don't include the Obas properly. We can keep it simple, sir. We make it a policy to include the Obas and our elders and rulers. And whatever they agree with the Oba at the palace can now be made as a consent judgment. That way the courts don't feel like they have been disenfranchised or their jurisdiction have been disabled or their works have been taken away from them. It can be encouraged that if, for example, a land dispute or a marital dispute or another form of dispute, by the way, other than criminal dispute, criminal, which is usually handled by the police, that is understandable. But even criminal too, sir, the complainant may say, okay, fine, it's an assault and battery occasioning harm. I will push the matter no more. I will not petition the assailant anymore. And the Oba can say, okay, fine, you sign here. If you sign here, we take it to court and it becomes a binding court judgment. That is one area we can promote. We can promote it because already the courts are overwhelmed. Even the persons going to court, our clients, they are bored, they are tired, they are just outraged by the sluggishness of the mechanism of justice of Nigeria. And I don't need to say more on that. I think we are all in agreement. So, Professor Sir, one area we can look at, as we have been saying so far, conflict resolution, dispute resolution, we should make it a definite governmental policy to encourage it. People going to court, go to the palace. When you agree at the palace, if you want it still signed and sealed in court, you take it to court as a consent judgment. If you're already in court, you can ask the court to adjourn for you to go to the Oba's palace and have a second look at this matter at the local level, if it will be agreed to be resolved at that level. And when it's resolved at that level, it becomes binding. So I'll make my submission simple. One last point, sir. Please, maybe in our subsequent conversation, let us take a second look at the national conference. I know, like it has already been said, and as the country knows, you were the engine house of that conference. The resolutions, the recommendations in that conference, particularly as regards our chieftaincy institution, maybe we should take a second look at it again. Maybe we should review it and see if there are things there that we can promote and canvass on this forum. I so submit, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Ambassador Igali.
I have to meet myself. Okay, thank you very much.
I hear you.
I think we are quite constrained for time, so I'll be quite brief. First, I would like to state that this opportunity given to us by Professor Akinyemi is an opportunity for us to share thoughts. Foreign policy, public policy are the products of critical thinking. So we cannot be static. Nation building itself is founded on ideas. We have to keep thinking. We have to keep sharing our thoughts. The idea is not to allow traditional rulers take over foreign policy. No, that will be going back to the very beginning of diplomacy, when it was kings and princes that were conducting diplomacy. But within the given circumstances, post-colonial Africa, there are still countries that have strong institutions. Let's not make light of it. Our traditional rulers are very strong. When you attend events, public events, or you go to their courts, you see that they operate as if the state does not exist. With their pomp and their pageantry, they still operate in their colors. So, and they are very strong in terms of influence. So I think we'll keep discussing what roles they can play for us in this forum in terms of foreign policy. And I see that we are also getting into the domestic aspect, maybe because of its influence on foreign policy. But we'll keep discussing, and we'll see how we can advise government, because there's nothing written down in the books that don't give traditional rulers a role to play. They've been playing roles of different sorts. The last week, Lawrence Obishake mentioned the kind of things that Ife does when he goes to Ibadan, goes to Brazil. Now, let me come to a practical experience. For those of us who have served around Nigeria's borders, I was Nigeria's Consul General in charge of the English-speaking part of Cameroon and Northern Cameroon, which is the entire 2,700 of borders before, during, and after the judgment, the ICJ. And I know that some of the most difficult issues that we had to deal with went to the traditional rulers in the various places. And they were able to solve problems for us. Even the delineation of the boundaries from the Lake Chad down to the Bakassi, we needed the traditional rulers to work with us. They did work with us. I want to mention a particular critical matter that came up at the time. We had 240,000 Nigerian refugees in different places, in parts of Cameroon, particularly around the border areas. And President Obasanjo sent for me during that period. In fact, these things made me to remain in Cameroon for 7 years, beyond our 4 years or 3 years. And he said, look, for goodness sake, God knows, go and bring back every single one of those Nigerians. I cannot tell you this embarrassment of going every day to every meeting and they tell me, oh, Nigerian refugees, Nigerian refugees. But the refugees were not ready to come back. How did we achieve the refugees to come back? I reported to Abuja. The difficulty is that these people don't trust Nigeria. They don't trust our security services. What do we do? And headquarters was clear. Look for people that they trust. Whom did these refugees trust? Fulanis. Fulanis were 140,000 of those who escaped. The remaining 100 were different small ethnic groups. They went to Cameroon with 3 million cows. I had to approach the Lamido of Adamawa on the Cameroonian side, not the Lamido on our side. And I told myself, look, this is my dilemma. I'm a head of mission. I have to perform. He said, okay, you want them back? I will talk to the Lamido of Adamawa on the other side. And after that, he called the Ardos and the heads of the Fulanis and said, look, you have to go back to your country. We cannot keep you here again. Everything is safe. I've spoken to the other side. I spoke to the third Aku of the Jukuns. I spoke to the Totif. I've spoken to these people. Go back. And within 1 month, we brought that large number of people back. They've stayed in Cameroon for 3 years. What I'm trying to say, and we did that during the other issues concerning Nigeria and Cameroon. So I think that there are roles. What is important is for us to find out how can they operate. Like we saw with what Sultan did in Niger. He opened the door. He opened the door for them to talk with them. And what the former Emir of Kano did, as His Excellency Prof. Akinyemi said. So I think that in subsequent, we'll keep this issue has to keep coming up until we can find what roles they can play. Even within the present constitutional order, there are things they can do. If in a particular place you think that can work, yes, we can use some people like that as special envoys to play certain roles. Now, finally, let me make an official announcement and an apology. After the last meeting, I spoke with Kabiesi, the owner of Ife, and I spoke with the Sultan, and they apologized and said Etsunupe will coordinate everything. Etsunupe called me while this meeting was going on to say that some of them had a handicap. They had a meeting in Abuja. Unfortunately, they could not arrive, and they were to join this Zoom meeting from that meeting. So that please, we should bear it in mind that they take this meeting very importantly, and they've agreed among themselves, some of the traditional rulers who will appear to talk with us, and they'll still get back to us to speak with us. And finally, that speaking with us is with a view to jointly organizing maybe a physical conference where we can deal with this matter. And they will tell us the several roles which many of them have been playing. Thank you very much, Excellency.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Akinyemi.
Well, we've ended up on a positive note, because I dare say that I was expecting a higher level of attendance of traditional rulers to this week. But in a way, like heads of states, traditional rulers' agenda also tend to become unpredictable. I'd like to thank those who've taken the time and the trouble to attend. As Ambassador Igali has said, this issue is not one that's going to be resolved through 1 or 2 meetings. We are probably the ones planting the seeds, and who knows what will germinate. I was particularly, you see, the more you listen to the experience of people, the more the issue itself gets built up. I said we are aware because it happened publicly, what happened with Niger. Ambassador Igali had just told us what happened with him and cows and Fulanis and Cameroon. The Olota Fota, had shared, views with us with the Eagles. And I know that it's not only just Olota that there are two Olotas, one in Nigeria and one in Benin Republic. I think there's another one that I have read about that has created problem, that the Alafin, the late Alafin, had to step in because there were two of them, one in Nigeria and one in Cameroon and in Benin Republic. And the more we talk, the more we probably will find out that there are many of these kinds of experiences that would then elevate our discussion from, the level of scholarship and academy to the level of practicality that in actual fact, our ambassadors, our diplomatists have actually experienced and have had to use the traditional rulers in resolving these matters. So I'm not disappointed. We will continue to build on the issues, and so I thank you all for your patience and your presence today. I'm sure Gaza will be there next week for us to dig our diplomatic teeth into and see what has happened.
On that note, thank you very much, sir, for this evening. And we will end the broadcast. Please, if you want to be added to our mailing list for this program, info@thruMYeyes.com. I'm going to type it in the chat window now and send to everyone. So you can send an email to that, and I will add you to the mailing list for this broadcast, info@thruMYeyes.com. And we will add you to the mailing list every Thursday, 7 p.m. Nigerian time. Professor Akinyemi is here with the rest of the team, and we're discussing current affairs. And as you have seen, the conversations go in the direction that we're moving in of current issues as they're breaking. We'll deal with those issues on this platform. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for this evening, and good night.